I used to think the saddest sound in a house was crying. It isn't. It's the sound of your own footsteps, walking through rooms you paid for, rooms you filled with expensive things, and realizing nobody is waiting for you in any of them. I was 79 when I understood that. Not when I went broke, not when my business failed, not when my wife left the last note on the small table by the front door. I understood it one ordinary evening, standing in the hallway of a house I once called my dream. The lights were on, the furniture was still there, my name was still on papers, but somehow everything that made it a life was gone. And the question that kept circling in my head was simple. How did a man win so much and still end up with nothing? I wasn't a bad man. That's what makes it harder to explain. I didn't drink too much. I didn't gamble. I didn't run around. I worked. That was my excuse for everything. I worked because I wanted to give my family more than I had growing up. At least that's what I told myself. And in the beginning, it was true. I remember our first small apartment. The carpet had a stain near the window that never came out. The heater clicked all night in the winter. My wife, Ellen, used to sit on the floor with our little boy, Mark, building towers out of wooden blocks. I'd come home tired from the office, and she'd look up and smile like I had brought the whole world with me. Back then, I didn't need much. Dinner on a small table, a tired laugh. My son running to the door when he heard my key turn. That was enough, for a while. Then I got promoted, just a small one at first, a better office, a little more money. People started saying things like, "You're going places." And I liked how that felt. I liked it more than I admitted. There was this one night, I still remember it because it seemed so small. Ellen had saved a slice of cake for me. Nothing special, just store-bought cake from Mark's school event. I came home late, loosened my tie, and saw it on a plate by the lamp in the living room. She said, "Mark wanted you to have some." And I said, "I'm too tired. I'll eat it tomorrow." Tomorrow came. The cake was still there. Then the next day, it was gone. I didn't ask where it went. That was one of the first things I missed. Not the cake, the meaning of it. At work, things moved fast. Money has a way of making you feel important, even when you're becoming smaller inside. I started staying later, first one night a week, then 3, then most nights. Ellen would call and ask, "Should I wait up?" And I'd say, No, don't wait. I'll be home soon." But soon became midnight. And midnight became normal. I told myself it was temporary. That's a dangerous word. Temporary. You can live a whole life inside that word if you're not careful. There was always one more deal, one more client, one more number I had to reach before I could relax, before I could be present, before I could finally be the husband and father I said I was working so hard to become. But the strange thing is, the finish line kept moving. When we bought the bigger house, everyone congratulated me. Ellen stood on the front lawn with her arms folded, looking up at the windows. I thought she was proud. Maybe she was, but looking back now, I think she was also wondering where we would fit inside all that space. The house was beautiful, long driveway, big windows, a room I called my office before we even moved in. I remember Mark running down the hallway, his shoes squeaking on the floor. He yelled, "Dad, look at my room," I said. In a minute, I was on the phone. I don't remember the call. I remember his voice. That bothers me, because I know the call meant nothing. And his voice, That was my life calling me. I just let it ring. Years passed in a way I didn't feel while they were happening. That's the part nobody warns you about. Life doesn't always disappear loudly. Sometimes it just gets scheduled over. Mark had baseball games, school plays, birthdays. I made some of them, enough to tell myself I wasn't absent. But I was never fully there. Even when I sat in the bleachers, I had papers on my lap. Even when Ellen sat beside me, my mind was somewhere else. She'd say, "Did you see that?" And I'd look up too late. Yeah, I'd lie. She knew. Of course she knew. One afternoon, Mark hit a ball farther than he had ever hit before. Everyone stood up. I heard cheering. I looked up from a contract just in time to see him rounding second base. He searched the stands. Not for everyone. For me. I raised my hand. He smiled a little. Not fully. Just enough. And then he kept running. I thought I had gotten away with it. I hadn't. Children remember where your eyes were. They may not say it then, but they know. Ellen changed slowly. Or maybe she didn't change at all. Maybe she just stopped offering parts of herself to a man who kept putting them down. She stopped telling me small things. A bird that kept landing on the porch rail. Something funny the neighbor said. A song she heard in the car. At first, I didn't notice. Then I noticed and felt relieved. That's the ugly truth, I thought. Good. Fewer distractions. I had become a man who saw love as an interruption. That sentence hurts me now, but it's true. There was one evening when she stood in the doorway of my office. I was reviewing numbers. The desk was covered with files. She had a coat on. I remember that. A dark blue coat. She said, "Mark and I are going to the school thing." I didn't even look up. I said, "Okay. Have fun." She waited. I could feel her standing there. Then she said, "You said you'd come." I rubbed my forehead and said, "I know. I just can't tonight." She didn't argue. That should have scared me. But at the time, I was grateful. No fight. No guilt. Just quiet. She turned and left. The front door closed softly, and I went back to my papers. That was the night something changed. Not all at once, but enough. There are moments in a life that don't announce themselves. They don't slam doors. They don't break glass. They just sit there, waiting for you to understand them years later. By my mid-50s, I had what I thought I wanted. My business was doing well. People came to me for advice. I wore nice suits. Men shook my hand a little firmer. Restaurants gave me better tables. I liked being recognized. I liked hearing my name said with respect. But at home, my name was said less and less. Mark became a teenager. Tall, quiet, polite in that distant way kids get when they stop expecting you to show up. I tried to connect with him using money. That was the only language I had practiced. I bought him a car when he graduated. He said, "Thanks, Dad," I said. "You earned it." But I didn't know what music he liked. I didn't know his best friend's name. I didn't know he had already decided to move 3 states away. Ellen knew. She always knew those things. I found out at dinner, not a special dinner. Just one of those stiff meals where the silverware makes more sound than the people, Mark said. I got accepted. I looked up. Accepted where? He glanced at his mother before answering. That glance told me everything. They had a whole life of conversations I wasn't part of. He said the name of the school. I smiled. I was proud. I truly was. But under that pride, there was a sharp little feeling, like I had arrived late to my own family. After he left, the house got quieter. I thought Ellen and I would find our way back to each other. That's what I assumed. I thought once the pressure slowed down, once money was stable, once life settled, we would return to who we were. But people are not rooms you can leave dark for years and then switch the light back on. She had learned how to live without needing me, and I had trained myself not to need anyone, so we became polite. That's a cold word when it happens inside a marriage. Polite. Do you want coffee? No, thank you. Will you be late? Probably. Did Mark call? Yes, he's fine, fine. That word covered a lot of empty space. I used to think silence meant we had peace. I didn't know silence could be something dying quietly. Then came the year I made the biggest money of my life. I should remember it as my victory year. I remember it as the year Ellen stopped wearing her wedding ring around the house. She didn't make a point of it. She didn't leave it somewhere obvious. She just didn't wear it. I noticed one morning while she was folding a towel in the hallway, her hand looked strange, bare. I almost asked. Then my phone rang, and I answered it. That's the kind of man I was. I saw my marriage slipping off her finger, and I answered the phone. The business kept growing, and then, like many things built too fast, it started cracking. A partner made a bad decision. A market shifted. A loan came due. I told myself I could fix it. I had always fixed things, so I borrowed more, worked harder, slept less. I became nervous in my own skin. At night, I'd sit in my office with the screen glowing in front of me, staring at numbers like they were a doctor's report. Ellen would pass by the door. Sometimes she'd stop, sometimes she wouldn't. One night she said, "Come to bed." I said, "I can't." She said, "You never can." Not angry, not loud, just tired. I looked at her then, really looked. Her face had changed, not just older, farther away, and for 1 second I felt scared. Then I pushed it down, because fear doesn't help numbers. That's what I told myself. A few months later, everything started falling. Clients pulled out, creditors called, the bank wanted answers. People who used to praise me suddenly became hard to reach. It's funny how fast respect disappears when the money does. I had spent decades building a name, and in less than a year, that name became something people whispered carefully. I remember sitting across from a lawyer. He slid papers toward me. His watch clicked against the table. I stared at my signature line, all those years of working, all those missed dinners, all those games I left early, all those times I said later, and there it was, a stack of papers. That was what I had traded for. Paper. When I came home that day, Ellen was sitting in the living room, no television on, no book in her hand, just sitting. I told her it was bad, worse than I had let on. She nodded slowly. I expected anger, maybe tears, maybe blame, but she only said, "I know." That hurt more than anger would have, because it meant she had been carrying the truth alone for a long time. I said, "I can fix some of it." She looked at me with the saddest calm I had ever seen, and she said, "You always say that." I didn't answer, because she was right. That was my whole life. I can fix it. I can make it up later. I can explain. I can do better when things slow down, but things never slowed down, and I never really fixed the things that mattered. Not long after that, she packed 2 bags. Only 2. After 48 years, she needed 2 bags. That fact still sits in me. She didn't take the expensive things, not the art, not the jewelry I had bought when I didn't know what else to give. She took clothes, a few photographs, a small box from the closet. I stood near the stairs and watched her. I wanted to say something that would stop her, But I had spent so many years not speaking when it mattered that my mouth didn't know how to begin. Finally, I said, "Where will you go?" She zipped the second bag. "My sister's, for now." For now, I repeated, like a fool, like the words mattered. She looked around the house, not bitter, just finished. Then she said, "I waited a long time for you to come home," I said. "I came home every night." And she shook her head. "Not hard, just once." "No, you didn't. That was the final turning point of my life, not the bankruptcy, not the empty accounts, not selling the house. That sentence, no, you didn't." Because she was right. My body had come home. My coat had hung by the door. My shoes had been by the chair. But I had not been there. Not in the way a person needs you to be there. After she left, the house became loud in a strange way. Every room had a memory trying to speak. The den where Mark once waited with a report card. The front steps where Ellen used to stand when I came home late. The hallway where I passed people I loved like they were furniture. I started noticing things I had ignored for years. A scratch on the wall from Mark's old bike. A faded spot where a family picture used to hang. A drawer full of birthday candles. So many tiny pieces of a life, and I had walked past them chasing something bigger. You don't see the cost while you're paying it. That's what I know now. You pay in minutes, then evenings, then years. Then one day, the bill arrives all at once. Mark visited me after the sale of the house. He was 40 by then. A grown man with his own tired eyes. We sat outside a small rental place I had moved into. Plastic chairs, traffic passing in the distance. For a while, neither of us said much. Then I said, "I'm sorry I wasn't around more." He looked down at his hands. I expected him to say it was okay. Children often do that for old parents. They soften the truth. But he didn't. He said, "I know." Just that, "I know." And then after a while, he added, "I used to think if I did better, you'd look up. I had no defense against that. None. I could handle losing money. I could handle losing status." But hearing my son say he had spent his childhood trying to earn my attention, that broke something in me I should have let break years earlier. I said, "You didn't have to earn that." He nodded. "I know that now, but he didn't know it then. That was on me. I'm 79 now. I live in a small place with a chair by the window and bills I can manage. Nobody asks my opinion about investments anymore. Nobody cares what my old office looked like. The suits are gone. The plaques are in a box. Sometimes Ellen calls. Not often. She's kind. We talk about Mark. The weather. Her garden. Small things. The kind of things she used to offer me for free when I was too busy to listen. I don't ask her to come back. Some doors close quietly, and you have to respect the sound they make. But sometimes, after we hang up, I keep the phone in my hand for a while, not because there's more to say, because there was always more to say. And I didn't say it when it could have made a difference. So if you're listening to this while chasing something, a promotion, a business, a number, a version of yourself you think will finally be enough, I'm not telling you to quit. I'm not telling you money doesn't matter. It does. Bills matter. Work matters. Responsibility matters. But be careful, because success is very good at sounding noble. It can make neglect look like sacrifice. It can make absence look like ambition. It can make you feel like you're building a life while you're quietly leaving it. Look up when your child speaks. Answer the small question your partner asks. Sit down before the room gets quiet without you, because one day the deals end, the phone stops ringing, the people who praised you move on, and you may find yourself standing in a house, or a room, or a life you worked so hard to afford, asking why it feels empty. I chased success for most of my life, and for a while, I caught it. That's the part people don't understand. I caught it. I held it. I lived inside it. But when I opened my hands at the end, there was almost nothing there. Just a name. Some old papers. And the sound of footsteps in rooms where love used to be.